The night was unusually quiet along Highway 17, a stretch of rural road that snaked through miles of dense forest. Amber's car had broken down hours earlier, its engine sputtering into silence under a sky heavy with low clouds. Her phone battery had died long before the last bar of service disappeared, leaving her stranded in a patch of nowhere. With no other option, she decided to walk along the shoulder, hoping to flag down a ride into town. The air was damp, the kind of heavy chill that clung to her skin and made every step feel slower, heavier. Each passing minute sharpened the reality of her situation, alone, vulnerable, and entirely dependent on the kindness of whoever might stop. When headlights finally appeared in the distance, she felt a wave of relief strong enough to make her throat tighten. She lifted her arm, waving frantically as the old sedan slowed to a crawl beside her. The driver leaned across the passenger seat and pushed the door open with a faint squeal of rusted hinges. "Need a lift?" His voice was gravelly, low, almost too calm. Amber hesitated, scanning the interior of the car, the torn upholstery, the faint smell of cigarettes, the odd collection of fast food wrappers scattered across the floor. But with no other options in sight, she forced a smile and climbed in. The man introduced himself as Carl, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly as he drove. He asked where she was headed, his eyes darting from the road to her face in quick, unsettling glances. Amber answered politely, though unease was already creeping into her gut. Something about his demeanor felt off. His questions shifted quickly from casual, "You from around here?" to strangely invasive, "Got family waiting for you? Anyone gonna miss you if you're late?" Each word left her colder, her body instinctively tensing as she forced herself to stay calm. She told herself he was just awkward, maybe lonely. But her instincts whispered otherwise. The car sped deeper into the forested stretch of highway. The night swallowed them, and Amber noticed he hadn't passed a single exit in miles. He kept the windows rolled up, the air stale and suffocating, while his fingers drummed against the wheel in a restless rhythm. Then, without warning, he asked if she believed in fate. His tone was strangely excited, as if the question held weight far beyond casual conversation. Amber's heart began to hammer in her chest. She tried to laugh it off, but his eyes lingered on her, gleaming in the passing beams of the headlights. It was then she noticed the glove compartment, its corner cracked open just enough to reveal a sliver of cold metal inside. Amber's pulse quickened. Every instinct screamed at her to get out of that car before it was too late. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, and the trees pressed in like dark, silent witnesses. She shifted slightly, calculating the distance to the handle of the passenger door, her mind racing through possibilities. The man smiled faintly, as though reading her thoughts, and pressed harder on the gas. The engine roared as the car surged forward into the night. Amber realized she was trapped, and this ride might not be taking her anywhere safe. The road narrowed further as Jason pushed deeper into Hollow Bend. The gravel hissed under his tires, the crunching sound swallowed by the rain. His wipers squealed across the glass, fighting the steady curtain of water. The GPS still spoke in its calm, mechanical tone, but the reception icon on the screen flickered in and out, like a heartbeat skipping. With each mile, the sense that he was driving into the wrong place pressed harder against him. Around the next bend, he saw something lying across the road, a dark shape, stretched from one side to the other. He slowed, his headlights sweeping over it. It was a tree branch, thick and slick with rain. Relief fluttered briefly in his chest. At least it wasn't an accident, or something worse. He eased the car forward, rolling the front tires over the limb, the suspension groaning softly, but as he passed, he noticed the ends of the branch were oddly clean. Not splintered from a storm. Cut freshly. The bark at the edges was pale, sap still beating in the rain. Jason's relief dissolved into a tight knot of unease. The branch hadn't fallen, it had been placed there. On purpose. Further ahead, the trees pulled back slightly, opening into a small clearing. The headlights revealed a weathered wooden sign nailed to a crooked post, "Welcome to Hollow Bend." The paint was faded to a ghostly gray, the letters rough-edged as if clawed at. Behind it, a single street lamp stood in the rain, its bulb faintly flickering. There were no houses in sight, no parked cars, no movement, just the lamp buzzing softly in the emptiness. Jason stopped the car. Through the curtain of rain on the windshield, something caught his eye. At the very edge of the light, just beyond where the clearing met the trees, a figure stood. Not moving. Not waving. Just watching. The rain streaked down his window, distorting the shape, but Jason could still make out the faint suggestion of shoulders, a head, and arms hanging unnaturally still at its sides. The gravel road narrowed until it felt less like a road and more like a trail carved into the woods. Amber's knuckles were white against the door handle, her pulse so loud in her ears that it nearly drowned out the hum of the engine. Carl whistled softly, tuneless, tapping the steering wheel with unsettling rhythm. It wasn't cheerful, it was deliberate, like the ticking of a clock counting down. Amber's mind screamed for her to act, but her body was frozen, caught between the need to escape and the fear of what might happen if she moved too soon. Carl's hand shifted suddenly, leaving the wheel. He reached down and tapped the glove compartment, the one cracked corner widening slightly with the pressure. Amber stiffened. "You curious?" he asked, his voice calm, teasing. The car swerved slightly as he used one hand to steer. Amber forced herself to shake her head, whispering, "No, not really." But her voice betrayed her, it quivered with unease. He chuckled low, a sound that made her stomach knot. "Most people can't help themselves. But I like people who mind their business." Her throat was dry, every swallow painful. She dared to glance at the forest beyond the window. It was endless black, no landmarks, no hope of orientation. If she jumped now, she would be running blind into wilderness that could just as easily kill her as save her. But the alternative, staying, felt like a slow descent into something worse. Her thoughts spun, racing faster than her breath. The seatbelt pressed against her chest like a restraint, and she considered unclipping it quietly. Then Carl did something that made her heart lurch. He pulled the car to a sudden stop, the gravel crunching beneath the tires as the headlights illuminated nothing but trees. He leaned back in his seat, exhaling heavily, as if savoring the moment. "You know," he said slowly, "fate really does bring the right people together. Sometimes, you just know when it's meant to be." His hand drifted toward the glove compartment again, fingers curling around the handle. Amber's entire body tensed, ready to spring, knowing whatever was inside could decide her fate in seconds. In that silence, Amber realized something vital. Her only chance was not just to escape but to outthink him. Fear alone wouldn't save her. Her instincts screamed at her to keep him talking, to stall, to find the slimmest opening before he revealed what was hiding in that compartment. With trembling hands, she forced herself to smile faintly and whispered, "So, what exactly do you think fate brought me here for?" The question hung in the air like bait, her words trembling but sharp, designed to buy her precious seconds. Carl's fingers lingered on the glove compartment handle, tapping it twice before pulling it open with a slow, deliberate click. The faint dome light flickered as the door dropped, spilling its contents into the dim glow of the car interior. Amber's breath caught, there it was, unmistakable now. A revolver, its metal glinting dully among a scattering of crumpled receipts, a dirty rag, and what looked like a faded photograph folded so many times the edges had nearly worn away. Carl rested his hand on the gun but didn't lift it, his smile widening at the way Amber's shoulders stiffened. "You see," he drawled, dragging the word out, "most people aren't supposed to trust strangers. But you did. You got in. That means something." His voice held a disturbing certainty, as though her simple act of desperation was proof of destiny itself. Amber forced herself not to flinch, not to look directly at the gun. Instead, she stared at the photograph, the corner of a woman's face barely visible through the folds. Her instincts told her not to ask, not to draw attention to it, but curiosity pressed against her chest, heavier than fear. Carl closed the compartment with a soft push, leaving the gun within reach but hidden again. The air inside the car felt heavier, thicker, as if every breath Amber took was borrowed. "I could have passed you by," he muttered, his eyes fixed on the road ahead though the car wasn't moving. "But I didn't. That's no accident. I think maybe, you're supposed to see something." His words were cryptic, but his tone dripped with conviction. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small silver lighter, flicking it open and shut with sharp metallic snaps. The repetitive sound clawed at Amber's nerves. The forest outside loomed like a cage, silent except for the faint whisper of whine through the trees. Amber's mind raced. Should she run now, bolt into the woods before he decided to take the gun out? Or should she keep him talking, hope his obsession with fate was a weakness she could use? Her pulse hammered so violently that she feared he could hear it. She shifted in her seat slightly, her hand brushing the seatbelt buckle again, preparing herself for the split-second decision that could mean survival or death. Carl leaned closer, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "People come and go out here. Most are forgotten. But you," he paused, his eyes locking onto hers with unnerving intensity. "You're different. I can feel it." His words sent a chill through her veins. She realized then that the gun wasn't just a weapon, it was a test. Whatever fate he imagined, he was deciding if she fit into it, and time was running out. Carl didn't touch the revolver again, but the weight of its presence lingered like a shadow in the car. Instead, he reached into the glove compartment and plucked out the folded photograph, smoothing it gently between his fingers. His expression softened for the first time, the manic gleam in his eyes dimming into something eerily sentimental. "She trusted me, too," he whispered, holding the photo close to the dashboard light. Amber caught a glimpse of the faded image, dark hair, pale face, a young woman whose eyes seemed tired, almost haunted. Amber's stomach twisted. Was that woman still alive? Or was she another victim swallowed by Carl's warped version of fate? She forced herself to keep her voice calm. "Who is she?" she asked, though every instinct screamed at her not to invite the answer. Carl's lips curved into a smile, but it wasn't warm, it was the smile of someone reliving a memory only he could understand. She was special. She understood what fate meant. She didn't fight it like the others. His fingers traced the woman's face on the paper before tucking the photo carefully back into the compartment, as though preserving a sacred relic. Amber's heart pounded harder. There were others. The word echoed in her skull like a death toll. She shifted in her seat, the buckle cool under her trembling fingers. Carl noticed the movement, his gaze flicking toward her hand. For a moment, silence thickened the air, and Amber thought he would lunge. But instead, he chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Don't even think about it," he murmured. His hand drummed the wheel again, that same steady rhythm, and Amber realized he was waiting, watching, to see how long she would play along. The car jolted forward suddenly as Carl eased it back onto the gravel path, the headlights swaying wildly over the trees. The deeper they went, the rougher the road became, branches scraping along the sides of the car like skeletal hands. Every bump rattled Amber's body, making her grip on the handle tighten. She knew if she didn't act soon, he would take her somewhere she could never escape. Somewhere even darker than this road. But her window of opportunity was razor thin, and one wrong move could mean his hand closing around that revolver. Carl's voice cut through the night again, startling her. You remind me of her, you know. Strong, but scared. I like that combination. He shot her a sidelong glance, his grin stretching wider. That's why fate brought you here. Not everyone gets chosen. His words weren't flattery, they were a verdict. And Amber realized with sick certainty that he wasn't just talking about the woman in the photo. He was preparing to make her part of whatever twisted story he was writing. If she wanted to survive, she had to rewrite that ending herself, and soon. The forest swallowed the sound of the sedan as Carl steered it deeper into the gravel path. Every bump jolted Amber closer to a decision. Her chest tightened with each passing second. She could no longer pretend this was harmless. His words, the gun, the photograph, it all pointed to one grim reality. If she didn't act now, she might never get another chance. Her thumb slid across the cold metal of the seatbelt buckle, pressing lightly. One click, one push, and she'd be free of the strap. But freedom came with a risk, hurling herself into darkness, into a forest she didn't know. Carl hummed under his breath, a broken tune that wavered between melody and muttering. He glanced at her again, his eyes gleaming. You're quiet. Thinking too much? His words were casual, but his tone dripped with suspicion. Amber forced her lips into a small smile, pretending calm, while her pulse thundered in her throat. Just tired, she whispered. He nodded, satisfied, and fixed his gaze on the road again. That was the opening. She pressed the buckle harder, praying the sound wouldn't be loud enough to alert him. Click. The seatbelt snapped loose, sliding off her chest. Amber shifted slowly, her hand creeping toward the door handle. The branches outside whipped close to the car, brushing the glass like skeletal fingers. If she leapt, she had to roll, had to run, had to vanish into the dark before he could reach the gun. Her lungs filled with a sharp breath as she tightened her grip. She counted in her head. 1, 2, 3. The tires hit a pothole, jolting the car violently. Amber's body slammed against the door, and instinct overrode thought. She yanked the handle and shoved with all her strength. The door flung open, the roar of wind and crunch of gravel exploding into the silence. She tumbled out into the night, pain lancing through her shoulder as she struck the ground hard. Dust and dirt filled her mouth, but she didn't stop. She scrambled to her feet, sprinting into the forest as the sound of screeching brakes tore through the trees. Carl's voice bellowed after her, raw and furious. You can't run from fate. The car door slammed shut, followed by the crunch of his boots on gravel. Amber's heart hammered as she plunged into the black forest, branches slashing her skin, her breath ragged and shallow. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to keep moving. Behind her, Carl's footsteps grew louder, closer, his voice carrying through the trees like a predator stalking prey. And Amber realized that escape was only the beginning of a new nightmare. Amber's breath tore through her chest as she sprinted blindly into the trees, her shoes slipping over roots and damp moss. Every branch seemed to claw at her clothes, every shadow twisted into the shape of a threat. Behind her, Carl's footsteps pounded against the earth, steady and relentless. He didn't shout anymore. The silence was worse. The absence of his voice meant he was conserving his breath, focused, determined to catch her. Each step she took felt like running through water, her muscles screaming, but adrenaline dragged her forward. The forest was endless, an unforgiving maze. Amber stumbled over a fallen log, skinning her knees as she hit the dirt. Panic urged her to rise before he closed in. She could hear him now, closer, heavy breaths mixed with the crunch of snapping twigs. For a fleeting second, she imagined his hand clamping around her wrist, yanking her back into the darkness. She shoved herself upright, ignoring the sting in her legs, and bolted deeper into the trees, veering off the faint path in the hope of confusing him. A faint light flickered ahead, cutting through the suffocating black. Amber's chest tightened with hope and terror all at once. It could be salvation, someone's cabin, a lantern, a sign of life, or it could be a trap, something she wasn't ready for. But she couldn't afford to hesitate. The crunch of Carl's boots grew louder behind her. She angled toward the glow, ducking under low branches that scratched across her face. Her breath came in ragged bursts, each inhale sharp enough to burn. The light grew stronger, shimmering through the trees, until she broke into a small clearing. Her heart lurched. At the center stood a dilapidated cabin, its single window glowing faintly from a lantern inside. The structure sagged with age, roof partially caved in, but it was shelter, maybe even occupied. Amber stumbled forward, nearly collapsing against the door. She pounded with both fists, whispering frantically, "Please, please, someone, open." But no answer came. The glow inside remained steady, silent. Behind her, a twig snapped, a deliberate sound that made the hairs on her neck rise. Carl was close, close enough to hear her pleas. Amber's hand fumbled for the doorknob, twisting it violently. The wood groaned as it gave way, the door creaking open into the dark cabin. She slipped inside, slamming it shut and throwing her body against it, heart pounding. The lantern's glow cast long shadows across rotting furniture and broken walls. The silence inside was suffocating, but it was better than the footsteps just outside. For now. Amber's back pressed against the cabin door, her chest rising and falling in ragged gasps. For a moment, the silence swallowed everything, no footsteps, no voice, just the faint hiss of the lantern on the table. Her ears strained for any sign of Carl outside, but the forest had gone unnervingly quiet. Too quiet. She forced herself to turn, scanning the cabin's interior. The walls sagged with damp, the floorboards bowed with rot, and every corner seemed alive with shadows. The lantern's glow flickered across something on the far wall, scratches, deep gouges carved into the wood. Her blood ran cold when she realized they weren't random. They formed words. "Help me," her breath hitched. She stumbled backward, her shoulder bumping the lantern, making it rock unsteadily. The faint glow illuminated more details: a broken chair overturned near the wall, a thick rope frayed at both ends lying abandoned on the floor. The smell hit her next, faint but unmistakable, metallic and sour, like rust and rot mingled together. She clamped a hand over her mouth, fighting the urge to gag. This cabin wasn't safety. It was a cage. Someone else had been here before her, and they hadn't left. The door rattled violently, jolting Amber's body against it. Carl's voice seeped through the wood, low and amused. "I know you're in there. Fate has a funny way of guiding people where they're supposed to go." The knob twisted, shook, then stopped. Silence stretched for a beat before he whispered, almost tenderly, "You found it, didn't you?" Amber's stomach lurched. What did he mean? She pressed her weight harder against the door, her entire body trembling. Then came the sound that froze her blood: footsteps. Not Carl's. These came from inside the cabin, slow and deliberate, creaking across the warped floorboards. Amber whipped around, eyes wide, staring into the darkness beyond the lantern's weak halo. "Hello?" she whispered before she could stop herself, her voice cracking. The footsteps halted. The shadows at the far end of the room shifted as though something, or someone, was standing just outside the light's reach. Amber's throat closed. She wasn't alone. The door shuddered again under Carl's weight, but Amber's attention was locked on the darkness inside with her. If she moved the lantern closer, she risked seeing what lurked there. If she didn't, she'd never know until it was too late. She was trapped between two nightmares: Carl outside, pounding on the cabin door, and something unseen inside, waiting. The footsteps inside resumed, slow and uneven, each creak of the floorboards crawling across Amber's nerves. She held her breath, her back still pressed against the door as Carl jiggled the handle from outside. "You can't hide forever," he crooned, his voice a venomous lullaby. But Amber's eyes were locked on the far corner of the cabin. The lantern's glow stretched just far enough to catch the outline of a figure, thin, gaunt, barely upright. A man. His clothes hung in tatters, his face sunken, eyes wide and hollow like those of a starving animal. Amber's heart slammed against her ribs. He didn't speak, didn't blink, he only stared. His arms twitched at his sides, rope burns visible around his wrists. She realized with horror he was the source of the "help me" scratched into the wall. Whoever he was, he hadn't escaped. He was trapped here long before she stumbled in. And now she was trapped with him. The door behind her rattled violently, Carl's weight slamming into it. "Open up, Amber. Don't be shy." His laughter rose, guttural and wild. The gaunt man flinched, his lips parting as if to form words, but only a rasp slipped out, dry, broken, almost inhuman. Amber shook her head, tears burning in her eyes. "Please," she whispered to him, "I'm not here to hurt you." But her voice trembled with terror, and the man's hollow eyes remained fixed on her like he couldn't decide whether she was friend or prey. Then the cabin door burst inward. Wood splintered as Carl shoved through, the revolver gleaming in his hand. His face twisted into a smile of triumph. "See? Fate always brings us together in the end." He stepped inside, his shadow devouring the lantern's light. Amber stumbled backward, colliding with the gaunt man in the corner. He let out a sharp hiss, his skeletal hand clamping around her arm with startling strength. Amber screamed, the sound swallowed by the collapsing silence of the cabin as predator and prisoner closed in on her from both sides. Carl raised the gun, his eyes glinting as he sized up the scene, the terrified woman trapped between him and the half-dead man. "Looks like you already met my friend," he said smoothly, almost amused. He wasn't strong enough to accept fate. "But you," his finger curled on the trigger, and the lantern flame flickered violently in the draft. In that single breathless moment, Amber realized she had only one choice left: fight, or let the forest claim her like it had the others. The world inside the cabin felt like it was collapsing, the lantern flame sputtering as if it too were terrified. Amber's pulse thundered in her ears, her arm pinned in the skeletal grip of the gaunt man. Carl took a step closer, raising the revolver, his smile widening. "Don't fight it, Amber," he whispered, voice dripping with madness. "This is how it's meant to be." The gaunt man suddenly lurched forward, not at Carl, but at Amber. His grip tightened, his nails digging into her skin, his mouth opening in a guttural, desperate cry. Amber's scream tore through the room, but in that chaos came opportunity. Carl's attention flicked to the man, his aim faltering for just a heartbeat. Amber seized it. With all her strength, she shoved backward, slamming the gaunt man into Carl's chest. The revolver fired, the deafening crack shaking the cabin. The bullet tore into the wall, missing Amber by inches. Carl staggered, shoving the weak man aside, fury twisting his face. "You think you can fight fate?" he bellowed. But Amber was already moving. She lunged for the lantern, snatching it off the table, the glass hot against her palms. Carl aimed again, but Amber hurled the lantern at him with everything she had. It shattered against his chest, flame erupting across his shirt. His scream was animalistic, rage and pain mingling as he dropped the revolver, clawing at the fire spreading across his torso. Amber didn't wait. She kicked the gun across the floor, snatched it up with shaking hands, and bolted for the door. The gaunt man let out a final rasping cry as she tore free, but she couldn't look back, not at him, not at the burning cabin. The night air hit her lungs like ice as she sprinted into the forest, clutching the revolver, her legs screaming with exhaustion. Behind her, flames licked the sky, devouring the cabin as Carl's screams dissolved into the crackling roar of fire. She didn't stop running until the forest gave way to asphalt, the blessed sight of the highway. Headlights appeared in the distance, another car approaching, slowing at the sight of her frantic waving. This time, Amber didn't just climb in without thought. She kept the revolver hidden in her lap, her eyes wide and alert. If fate wanted her dead tonight, it had lost. She had survived, not because of destiny, but because she refused to be written into Carl's story.